You think capitalism protects traditional values? It erodes them. What do I mean by this? Let's get into this. And this is a very interesting subject, and by no means is it original to me. So, we have a situation in which capitalism is at war, not just with the liberals, but in fact the conservatives, particularly the traditionalist conservatives. What do I mean by this, and what is my case that is being made? So, we have to first and foremost define capitalism. Capitalism, if we are to define it, is, I would argue, the definition put forth by Karl Marx, in his book Das Kapital. He defines it as, quote, a mode of production, meaning the way in which production happens. And so what he argues is it is essentially the boss-worker relationship or dynamic. That is capitalism. So that is the dominant mode of production. That is how wealth is created in this society. And the mode of production determines the distribution of wealth within society at large. This is what Karl Marx's entire thesis was about. Contrary to what many would say, he really didn't give a rat's behind about the state, so to speak. He never once mentions the state in his work Das Kapital, not once. So that's, first and foremost, what I mean by capitalism. And if we take into account Marx's notion of social reproduction, that being that people inevitably are always going to prioritize their material interests. What do we mean by this material interest? So the food that you eat, you have to eat food, you have to pay your rent, you need a roof over your head, and so on and so forth. You are going to dedicate a good deal of your time towards your material interests. Here's an example that I like to use. A person who wants to play guitar all day and doesn't value material possessions morally, nonetheless places his material interests at the top in terms of priority, even if morally he places them sort of below. Evidence of this is the fact that he has a guitar to begin with. He needs to be able to eat, have a home, and all of that, not to mention a guitar to be able to actually play guitar all day, every day. So that's number one. And so when we understand this, we see that the shareholders within corporations and so on and so forth are going to go with what maximizes profit. And the reality is that this sort of cyberpunk-esque world that we live in, increasingly so, when you think about it, and hedonistic sort of mainstream narrative, for example, normalizing of things such as a fan-only site. I think you know what I'm talking about. This is part of what is profitable. That essentially, when the mode of production is geared solely towards the maximization of profit, then inevitably traditional values are going to be eroded. And so any true traditionalist conservative is going to be critical of capitalism. Now, some people say, I want capitalism but heavily regulated. Fine, okay? So let's go with that. It's a rather naive position, but let's go with it. The fact of the matter is that those regulations that have been put in place are going to be lobbied against and so on and so forth because profit maximization is key. Profit maximization is at the heart of this. And so it is systems that need to be changed, not hearts. And if you think about it, there is a religious basis for this. The Bible, for example, talks about not putting oneself in environments that cause temptation, removing oneself from the proximity of temptation. And so you already have a conservative basis for critiquing capitalism. The very values that traditionalist conservatives claim to uphold are water on the line here if you continue to maintain capitalism.